I'm Stephanie Benvenuto, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 9:01 on September 9th, 2021, and I am calling to order the special meeting of the board. The process we're using for today's meeting is authorized by Governor Newsom's Executive Order N0821, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. This meeting is occurring by video conference with all board members, our CEO, Housing Commission staff, and General Counsel participating by video. For the record, I'll ask each board member to indicate their presence as I say their name. Vice Chair Klumpner?
Here.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Hester?
Here. Sorry. Here.
Commissioner Hubbard? Not here. And Commissioner Mitchell? I see him. Does that count?
I'm here.
I don't know the rules if you have to like audibly say it for it to count.
Madam Chair, since you forgot who I was a couple of meetings ago, I'm testing you every meeting now to make sure you remember who I am.
Your memory got real good. All right. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may watch the video conference and hear the audio of today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agenda for today's meeting included a link to the website for the Housing Commission Board of Commissioners where the public can access the live streaming for today's meeting. The public has been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form and a toll-free phone number. A link to the online comment form was included on the agenda for today's meeting, which was posted on the website, www.sdhc.org on Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. A revised agenda was posted online on Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 to add a staff recommendation action on item 104 on today's agenda regarding the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. The agenda and the public comment form explain the comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record if they were submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday, Wednesday, September 8th. Non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. In addition, members of the public who wish to speak on an item may call the toll-free number that is included on the agenda. Members of the public should monitor the meeting through the live video streaming available through the Housing Commission's website, www.sdhc.org. Again, today's agenda includes a link to the website for the board where the public can access the live streaming for today's meeting. Members of the public should call the toll-free phone number only when their item that they wish to comment on is introduced. If a caller begins to comment on an item that's different from the item that's currently being considered, we'll ask them to hang up and call back into the meeting at the correct time. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments, but if we see a large number of callers that wish to speak on a single agenda item, we may limit them to 1 minute each. For non-agenda public comments, the phone line is now open to provide a non-agenda public comment. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue to provide non-agenda public comments. We'll go ahead and give a 90-second period to allow people to call in. So Mr. Marshall, can you just let us know when that time is up? This is the time when members of the public may provide comments to the Housing Commission Board about topics that are not on today's agenda, but involve a subject within the Commission's area of responsibility. The Commission can't take action on a non-agenda public comment, but the number is 833-610-2513. We did receive one written non-agenda public comment for today's meeting. So while we're waiting on the calls, I'll go ahead, I'll go ahead and read that. Read that into the record. Lafayette Brown wrote, desired action. I want to learn what action can be taken to limit lease photograph release clauses to residential community security purposes only. Their summary, as a condition of renewing my lease at a Con-Am managed property, I have to agree to give the owner affiliates, etc., unlimited use of photo or video imagery taken in common areas. I do not believe that owners should be allowed to have unlimited use of resident photo or video imagery to give, sell, etc. to third parties at their discretion. Question, if I do not sign, parentheses, agree to, the photograph release clause, can Con-Am disapprove my lease renewal? I will now ask our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall, if we have any callers for non-agenda public comments.
We do not have any callers.
Okay, thank you. Moving into commissioner comments. Do we have any comments from the commissioners? Okay. You can tag in if you change your mind. But I would
apologize, Chair Benvenuto, and I apologize. A caller just popped up that I believe was for on a different public comment.
Absolutely. Go ahead, caller.
Our caller is identified as MINES, number ending in 7823. Caller, please begin making your comments. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, I just want to know if the Housing Commission could please enforce, here I live at Town and Country, because they keep smoking marijuana and cigarettes, and it's affecting our health, and we have to go from room to room to room, and my husband was hospitalized for a month.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry to hear that. Can we have staff follow up on that issue? Is that I can do that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So back into commissioner comments, I would like to take a bittersweet moment here and announce that Commissioner Maggie Davis is resigning from the board effective October 1st. Maggie has been here since I showed up. I think you've served quite a good chunk of time here, and we really appreciate all of your insight and your thoughtful feedback, and just been a really joyful presence to serve with. So thank you for your time. Do you want to make any comments?
Thank you. Not a lot. I just want to say I have learned so much from everyone while I've been here, and I truly am proud of all the job you all do to help with low income and the homeless. It's been a pleasure, and I know you have a lot of work coming up. So I wish you the best of luck, best of health, and thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. We'll miss you. And quite appropriately, we're going to move on to the CEO, President and CEO report. Mr. Gentry.
Thank you. I just got 5 very brief comments. Well, one of them's not so brief, but most of them are. First one is I wanted, from a staff standpoint, Maggie, wish you well. Let you know how much we're going to miss you. You've been great in providing guidance, direction, and making sure that if there's anybody on the board that's a truth teller that will call out what is, it's you. And thank you for that. You've been great, great advice given to me, and I'm going to miss you. Wish you well. One item, Madam Chair, I'd like to do a fairly broad report about, and that is the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. As you know, the Housing Commission is continuing to successfully help families struggling with rent and utility payments during the COVID-19 pandemic. And on August the 18th, I joined Mayor Todd Gloria, U.S. Representative Scott Peters, and Council President Jennifer Campbell for a news conference about the Housing Stability Assistance Program. We were also joined by a Pacific Beach resident named Eric, who has received help from this program. And Eric was able to remain in his home and avoid homelessness because of this program. Eric's story is quite compelling, and I'd like now to share with you all a video of his comments at this news conference. It won't take but about a couple of minutes to do this. And Susie Kaywood, I believe you've got this on. She's going to share her screen with us all to view the Eric's comments, if you would please.
The COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program has been a blessing for me. It has helped me a lot and kept me on my feet, for sure. I have my master's degree in computer engineering. I had a good job before COVID started, and the pandemic caused my business to shut down. Early in the pandemic, I lost my job. I tried to find work, but no one was hiring. Over time, I was down to my last $500, and my savings and my bills and rent was unpaid. My car was repossessed, and a lot of other things was due. I feared becoming homeless. As a teen growing up in Dallas, Texas, I experienced being homeless with my family for about 3 years when I was younger. I did not want to go back to being homeless ever again. I do not want to go back to it, and I will not go back to it. When I heard about the City of San Diego's COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program, I applied right away the first day that it started. The application was easy to fill out, and housing assistance from the San Diego Housing Commission was very helpful to help me through the process. She called me to let me know when my documents were due, and called my landlord and made sure they knew what was going on. The help I received from the City of San Diego and the San Diego Housing Commission through this program saved me through a tough situation. I'm getting back on my feet now. I have a new job, thank God. It's a great stress reliever knowing that I will be able to stay in my apartment because of this program. After I applied, my landlord also worked with other tenants in our housing, in my apartment complex, to help get started in the program. This help is real. Please apply if you can. Please apply. I encourage you, if you need help, to reach out. And I'm very grateful for this program, and thank you for all who made it possible. Thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susie. And a video of highlights from this news conference is also posted on the Housing Commission's website, which is www.sdhc.org. And later in this morning's meeting, the board will be hearing more about additional funding proposed for the Housing Stability Assistance Program. But right now, I'd like to ask our Deputy CEO, Jeff Davis, to provide an update on this program to you all with numbers showing the great degree of success we have had to date. Jeff, if you would please, sir.
Good morning, commissioners. So more than 10,900 households with low income have received help to pay rent and utilities so far through the Housing Stability Assistance Program. We've issued payments totaling more than $95 million to help these families. So that means 100% of the original $83.7 million allocated for this program has been expended. We're now issuing payments with the funds that this board and the Housing Authority approved in late July. The program is successfully providing funds to local households in need, and jurisdictions across the country are really experiencing great challenges dispersing these federal funds. Nationwide, only 20% of the allocated federal emergency rental assistance funds have been spent, according to the Treasury Department. We are seeing that the need for assistance continues. We continue to see upwards of 100 applications submitted newly each and every day. Since the program launched in March, we've received more than 20,000 applications for assistance. Of these applications, more than 74% have income at or below 30% of the AMI. Another 20% have incomes between 31 and 50% of AMI. More than 18,800 additional applications are pending completion, so those may be coming in as well. And we also continue our efforts to raise awareness about the program to make sure that every family that may need it knows it's available. On August 18th, the news conference Rick mentioned, that's one example. We also coordinated with 211 San Diego so that staff are there to provide information and answer questions about the program at a community opportunity fair that Council Member Sean Elo Rivera's office will be holding tomorrow. We provided 500 informational flyers to the council member's office for that event. So that housing opportunity fair will take place from 10 a.m. to noon tomorrow at Mountain View Community Center. We're also anticipating starting to air new radio ads in English and Spanish starting next week. These ads will feature Mayor Todd Gloria and Councilmember Vivian Moreno. So our staff continues to review and process applications and disperse assistance payments as quickly as possible to help those families who need it. This program's success to date is a result of truly outstanding work from the staff in our rental assistance division and really every other department throughout the agency working on this truly agency-wide effort. And we're very proud of the work that our team has done. Their diligence, their commitment, their long hours, their hard work are making a difference for the many households experiencing the financial impacts of this pandemic. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I might pause at this point with your permission and ask if there are any comments or questions from the other board members about this implementation of this program.
Thank you. I'll take a second and just say that I am blown away by the ability of staff to really have gotten out there, and a big shout out too to the partnerships that were enabled by Commissioner Mitchell and Commissioner Hester's work. I know that they've been very much in contact with Molly and Jeff and their team. So really proud of this. It's going to be an interesting. It breaks my heart that we could end up with a situation with more applicants than we have the money to help at some point, but proud that we were able to get there. So commissioners, any other feedback on this one?
Madam Chair, I'd like to just say that, I want to express my deep appreciation for Molly and Jeff. I remember the meeting we discussed getting this money and I think you guys understood my concern is that we could not fail. I appreciate the fact that you all joined us in this journey and executed so well. I think there were a lot of people that did not expect us to be successful. And when you can look back and realize that $83 million left and actually help people sleep better, knowing that had accrued due to this pandemic were now addressed. I think we all have to realize that the human spirit gets crushed by moments of stress that seem overwhelming, and your effort on this truly relieved people of some stress and helped them sleep a little easier. And I know that we have another $39 million that is coming to us, and I look forward to watching you. And I want to say thank you to all the partners that helped. I love the creativity. The fact that we went mobile, Molly, we knew that we couldn't just do it the old-fashioned traditional way. We had to come up with creative ways to make this work. And so you guys should all be really, really proud of yourselves. And I think in the report that I read in the materials that you guys presented, only 20%, Jeff, of the funds allocated for this purpose nationwide have been allocated. That signifies even more so what a tremendous effort that you guys made and did. And I would assume that we're probably one of the few in the state that has actually been able to accomplish this. So my kudos and my deep appreciation, because I will agree with the chair. With the chair, it breaks my heart what people are going through right now, and every little bit of moments like this help. So,
Madam Chair, Commissioner Hester. Congratulations to the team. I'm really, this is one of the top projects I had my eye on to make sure that, we are working together, and it paid off. I want to repeat, 100% has been expended compared to a 20% nationwide is pretty freaking remarkable, if I can say so myself. So good work. And, when we work together, we really do provide the services that can be had by San Diegans. So thank you for the work.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Davis, I would like to say, I don't know if this is the right segment to say this, but years ago, they produced this document, which is just as you can see, it's a handheld document with all the information on where either homeless or low income or anyone in the public can get help. And you open it up, it's an 8.5 by 11 page. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's not. It's just a strip off of it, 8.5, 11. It has all the contacts for anybody that wants help, where to go, the Housing Commission, any mental help, any financial help, any general information. And I used to pass these out to the homeless. When I would see somebody on the street, or they would be stopping me for some money on the corner, I'd give him one of these, and it was really helpful. I wish they would think of doing this again. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could as well, there's one other staff leader I want to call out just for the board's attention. That's Asuzema Valladolid, who was together with her team of managers in our rental assistance program, oversaw right at 100 attempts to implement this program. And as also both Johanna and Mitch, who gave great help and assistance in doing outreach and connectivity. But as you remember, as late as April and May, we were worried about getting the program fully utilized. And it was outreach to the state to get the state to change the rules that helped tremendously as well. So for those of us and those of you all who had put in a good word with the governor and with the legislature to get the rules changed to reflect reality, thank you for that as well. But this has been a great success. And as you'll hear later on in the morning with an additional action item, we're not quite done with it yet.
Big shout out to labor for their partnership too, Mr. Gentry, because I think that without them, they bought it and they jumped in 100%. And I just hope that as a region, we can allocate all the funding that we've been given, but I know that this commission did, and I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. And since we're letting Commissioner Mitchell have 2 comments, I'm going to also take 2 comments. Briefly, I was able to glance through the audit that the council did, and they did call out some of the Housing Commission's work. And I'm certainly not an auditor, but even the points where the audit was trying to be critical of the pace at which we had to work, and some of the documentation needs, I think that the commission had the absolutely appropriate approach of flexibility with the applicants, meeting the applicants where they were, understanding that not all documentation is going to be available if you're an under-resourced family with bad internet connection. The feedback on the auditor's report that I think was intended to be critical was something that I found myself being proud of, the way that staff approached this moment. And so just reading that, I wanted to make sure that staff had a call out, and absolutely on Susanna, your team, and the logistics, the sheer day-to-day of what that is a major lift. And I'm exceptionally proud of the work that everybody did. Rick, did you have anything else on your report, or should we go on to?
Yes, ma'am. Two very brief items to mention. One is another program near and dear to all of our hearts, and that is our first-time homebuyer program. We had a major event with Councilmember Moreno on July 21st, just this summer. And we joined Ms. Moreno for a virtual workshop about our first-time homebuyer program. The topics covered during the workshop included the resources that are available for eligible first-time homebuyers, which you all remember from the presentation we did to you earlier this year. And we shared this information online, and the video is available on the first-time homebuyers program page, which is also on the Housing Commission's website. In concluding, Madam Chair, there were two awards that the Housing Commission received notice of since the last meeting I'd like to mention to you. First is for the 5th consecutive year, our procurement department received an Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award from the National Procurement Institute. This national award honors organizations that demonstrate excellence by obtaining a high score based on standardized criteria, measures innovation, professionalism, productivity, e-procurement, and leadership attributes of the organization. That's on our procurement department. And also, in addition to that, for the 11th year in a row, our finance department has earned an award for our annual financial report. This award is from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. And this same organization previously awarded the Housing Commission an award for a fiscal year 2020 comprehensive annual financial report as well. And to Madam Chair, to reiterate what you just said with your remark, these are two of the shops that basically keep us in compliance and keep us out of trouble. And they do a great job doing it top on out. So to both procurement and finance staffs, thank you. And Madam Chair, I'll turn the meeting back to you now.
Thank you. Congratulations to the team. I'm always impressed by the sheer volume of the awards that this group gets, but also that there are so many organizations that give out those awards. That's fantastic. But kudos. So next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the special meetings of July 9th, 2021 and August 20th, 2020. The phone line is now open for public comments about the minutes. That number is 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We did not get any written comments, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll go ahead and give it the 90 seconds.
Madam Chair, we do not have any callers.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment period for the minutes. Do any commissioners wish to make any changes to the minutes, or is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Is there a second?
Second, I'll second.
Great, thanks, Commissioner Hester. We'll go ahead and vote. I'm going to ask each commissioner to say your vote when I say your name. Vice Chair Klumpner,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
I'll add my vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously. And now on our consent agenda, I am proposing that items 100 and 102 be placed on the consent agenda. Item 100 is the application for state Cal Home program funds. Item 102 is the final note and bond authorization for Aquila Apartments, previously known as 3 Roots. The phone line is now open for public comments about items 100 and 102. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We had no written public comments submitted regarding these items, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. Go ahead and give it the 90 seconds.
Madam Chair, again, we do not have any callers.
Thank you. That concludes public comment period for items 100 and 102. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I just had a quick question on the consent agenda, but the staff can get back to me on the Cal Home aspect. Mr. Gentry, I noticed that one of the statements in the staff report talked about the limit of 100,000 for people who participate in the program. And I just wanted to know if that number has that always been the number, has always been limited to 100,000. And if the reason why I ask that is, as the market continues to spiral out of control from a cost standpoint, is the 100,000, is that an appropriate number, or is that a number that's outdated that has never been looked at and adjusted? And the second thing is on the Aquila Apartments, I know staff, Jeff, you guys have done a great job of letting me know where transportation is located. That's another great example of one that's out in the middle of nowhere, and people to services, to doctors, to appointments, really difficult when there's not a transportation hub that's effectively close enough. So.
And Jeff, I don't see Suhado on my screen. I don't know. Are you here?
I'm on, Mr. Gentry. Yes, thank you.
Lovely.
So Commissioner Mitchell, thank you. That's a great question. The $100,000 question that you have asked. Our average assistance that we provide for some home buyers has been about $73,000 in the last fiscal year. So it more than meets, I think at the moment, has met the demands and needs of the home buyers who seek our assistance. But we will, as home prices go up, we'll certainly take that into consideration and discuss internally.
Yeah, I just think I think what is our median now, Mr. Gentry? Is it 730, 740 here in the region? So I just question whether that number needs to be moved appropriately. So thank you for that answer.
But I think the applicable number here is a percentage of the cost of the mortgage. I believe that's right at 17%, isn't it, Suhada?
Correct.
So as it goes higher, then that number will go higher as well.
It automatically adjusts. Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Do we have a motion or any other questions?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Klempner and seconded by Commissioner Mitchell. We'll go to the vote. Vice Chair Klempner,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
Aye.
and Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
I will also vote in favor, so that motion carries unanimously. We'll now proceed with action items on our agenda today. The PowerPoint presentations were emailed to the commissioners yesterday, September 8th, and are posted on the Housing Commission's website. Our first item is item 101, the fiscal year 2022 section Housing Choice Voucher Administration Plan. Excuse me. The phone line is now open for public comments on item 101. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted regarding this item. Again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take those public comments after the staff presentation. We'll be hearing from Executive Vice President of Rental Assistance, Susana Valladolid, and Interim Director of Rental Assistance, Jennifer Kelly, this morning. So begin whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Need access to share my screen. I think, Jose, if you can stop sharing your item and I can pull up my PowerPoint. Thank you. Yep.
I was just saying that Jose can run through the slides for you if you'd prefer.
Get it up and running. Sorry, there was a little freeze on my end. So sorry, I apologize for that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to our Benvenuto commissioners, Mr. Gentry and council. HUD requires that all public housing authorities maintain a board-approved administrative plan that contains the current policies by which it governs its Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher programs. The plan must state that the PHA's policies in those areas where the PHA has discretion to establish local policy. The fiscal year 2022 administrative plan includes a few noteworthy changes to the policies regarding the administration of the Housing Choice Voucher and special programs. The fiscal year 2022 administrative plan includes the following proposed changes and new policies. 1, shared housing resident owner policy. 2, project-based voucher occupancy standards. 3, project-based voucher inspections. And 4, policies governing the new emergency housing vouchers program. These proposed changes must be approved in order for full implementation. HUD issued new guidance in January of 2021 and encouraged shared housing as a tool to reduce barriers to housing. Shared housing is a special housing type in which an assisted family can share a rental unit with another assisted or non-assisted family. Using this notice, HUD revised its previous rule, which stated that if the owner also resided in the unit, the owner could not be related by blood or marriage to the assisted family under any circumstance. HUD has revised this rule stating that PHAs must grant an exception to allow an owner-related resident if the exception is needed as a reasonable accommodation for an assisted family with a disability. We are proposing a change in the policy regarding project-based voucher occupancy standards in order to reduce barriers to housing and house more individuals. This change brings our project-based voucher programs in line with HUD's housing quality standards in allowing 2 persons to share a studio unit. This change would be particularly beneficial when providing housing to individuals experiencing homelessness by allowing us to serve more people in studio units. The Housing Commission Board and HUD-approved fiscal year 2022 MTW plan included a change to the project-based voucher initiative allowing for alternative inspections in lieu of HQS inspections at new project-based voucher developments. The alternative inspections may include accepting a certification of occupancy or a temporary certification of occupancy, which is approved by the city's Inspection Services Department and Development Services instead of conducting HQS inspections. This change maintains verification of the condition of a unit and shortens the time it takes to lease a unit through the project-based voucher program for new PBV developments. This change also simplifies the process for owners and only applies for new PBV developments. After the initial lease-up, HQS inspections will be conducted on a biannual schedule according to the PBV policy laid out in our current admin plan. The Emergency Housing Voucher Program was created through an appropriation of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 to assist individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness, at risk of experiencing homelessness, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, and households who are recently homeless and for whom providing rental assistance will prevent the family's homelessness or having a high risk of housing instability. This program is designed to quickly identify and house families in these vulnerable categories. Because ongoing supportive services are strongly encouraged by HUD but not funded by HUD, the Housing Commission has worked to establish partnerships with many support service agencies in our community to increase housing stability for these families. The Housing Commission was awarded 480 emergency housing vouchers, and this section sets forth required policies for administration of the program following the HUD mandate to include in the PHA admin plan. I would also like to recognize our Homeless Housing Innovations Division, who is partnering with the Rental Assistance Division to implement this program and provide many of the required services to these high needs populations. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on this slide. This concludes the presentation. A summary of the administrative plan changes is included in the board report. And Jennifer and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Scott, did we have any callers?
No, we do not.
Thanks. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments on this item?
Madam Chair, I know it seems like I have a lot to say today. I'm getting to that point in this discussion around housing as the crisis continues to get worse. I'm always going to ask the question of where we started and where we are today and measuring progress. And my question on the Section 8 housing voucher stuff is I think in the report I sent, it said we have 480. The new what's the total number that we're approving?
So for the new vouchers under the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, we received a new allocation of 480.
480. And so that brings the total. So total vouchers under Section 8 for us is how many?
So in total, our voucher baseline is 16,284.
Okay, so 16,284. So we'll add an additional 480 to that number.
The 16,284 includes these new 480.
That is our total now. So I'm fine with, I guess my question then, my additional question is, as the housing crisis has continued to get worse, vouchers are far more valuable, more important. So what was the total number of vouchers we had? Do you know this number off the top of your head? And if not, you can get back to me. What was our total for 2011 and 2016, and how much have we gone up? Have we increased this number?
I don't have the exact numbers for 2011 and 16, but it is definitely something that I can send to you after this meeting.
And my reason for asking is that I think that when you read the report, anytime you get additional vouchers, it sounds great. But again, as our housing crisis has gotten worse, I want to make sure that are we seeing the increase in vouchers? Are we seeing an increase in vouchers that is appropriate for a region that is a high cost of living region where people are struggling even more every day?
And Mr. Mitchell, this is Rick Gentry. I could give you a broader answer to that too, give a little perspective if you'd like.
Sure.
We have not received an increase in vouchers commensurate with the housing characteristics of this area, in my opinion, over the years. Typically the increase that comes from the federal government is by formula. Is not based on application or strictly need. It's based on a formula which can broadly be based on need factors. But from the beginning of the program in 1975 until about 1995, the program grew by leaps and bounds every year. Beginning in 1995, with federal government efforts to balance the budget, quote unquote, the rate of increase slowed to a trickle. And it's been the rate of increase in vouchers since 1995 has been less, I believe, than the increase in need warranted by it. I will point out that the budget that's before the Congress right now, if it passes as proposed by the Biden-Harris administration, would show something like a 15% increase in vouchers, which would be the most we've received in any one year in the last 25 years or so. And also one of the campaign planks in the current administration was to go to something called universal vouchers, which would make an entitlement much like mini welfare type programs, if that were to be passed by the Congress. So there is movement afoot, and there is a recognition of the need out there, but the direct short answer to your question is no, sir, it is not kept up.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Gentry. That is incredibly valuable information. And Madam Chair, I would suggest that I think it's moments like this where hopefully this organization is voicing our support for the proposed increase of 15%. And I think it needs to be voiced aggressively to the congressional delegation that represents San Diego, so that they understand that, again, we've had the same problem on the BAW side, the basic allowance for housing with the military. The BAW is done by formula. It never doesn't take into consideration the market. And that's why you have so many military families that struggle here in San Diego. And on Section 8, same thing. You can't look at it as a one size fits all. You really need to be aggressive in saying our market is driving a greater demand and more need. And so, I think we should support the 15%. But, Rick, I would like to see us be much more vocal, much more visible with the congressional delegation and to the mayor about this is appropriate, but we also need to make sure that is lagging. So.
I see Molly taking notes. We will do it right away.
Yeah, I saw her pick up her pen too. Thanks, Molly.
Those are good points, Commissioner Mitchell. And the commission's had some success with our delegation, particularly with Representative Peters in the past on some of the VASH issues. So I think we can try to replicate some of that advocacy work. Any other commissioner comments or a motion? I will quickly just ask thank you, Commissioner Mitchell, but briefly, Susanna, I'm going to take the opportunity to be a little bit bleak. Can you tell us what the wait list number is right now for our vouchers?
So our waiting list still remains around 100,000 households waiting for rental assistance. So to Commissioner Mitchell's point, the demand for assistance is always far greater than the resources that we have. I can say on a positive note, what some of the efforts that we've been able to utilize through our MTW initiatives has allowed us to provide assistance to more than 100% of the household voucher baseline that we provide. So we're currently at about 110% utilization on the traditional Section 8 voucher allocation. So we do what we can to assist as many households as possible, but we definitely need more funding and more vouchers coming our way.
Absolutely. Thank you. For context, we have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Klumpner. We'll go ahead and vote. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I will add my vote in favor. That motion carries 5-0. Item 103 is the approval of a memorandum of understanding to participate in a bond recycling program. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 103. That number is 833-610-2513. Please call to be placed in the queue. We did not have any written public comments, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take those public comments after the staff presentation, and we'll be hearing from Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Colin Miller. Colin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Benvenuto, Commissioners, Mr. Gentry, and Mr. Christensen. The item before you this morning is the approval of a memorandum of understanding between the San Diego Housing Commission, the Housing Authority of the City of San Diego, and the California Housing Finance Agency. Next slide, please. So for some background, tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds, also known as private activity bonds, have been an essential resource to finance the creation and preservation of affordable housing for more than 30 years. In 1986, the Federal Tax Reform Act imposed a limit on the amount of private activity bonds that can be issued in the state each year. The limit is determined by the state's population multiplied by a specific dollar amount. Now, in 2021, the state volume count for California was approximately 4.1 billion in available bonds. So these bonds are used for a number of public benefit programs, including multifamily housing, as well as industrial development, exempt facilities like the Carlsbad desalinization plant, as well as solid waste and recycling facilities, public and secondary schools, just to name a few. In California, the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, or CDLAC, was established to administer the allocation of this bond ceiling or bond cap to make certain that the total amount of private activity bonds issued does not exceed the limits established under federal law. Starting in 2020, the bond allocations became competitive as demand for tax-exempt bonds exceeded the annual supply. So what was once a readily available source of funding has become extremely competitive, and the production of affordable housing has slowed as a result. Next slide, please. Traditionally, an affordable housing development would pay off the majority of its tax-exempt bonds that was allocated to it when the construction of the project was completed and the property converted to its permanent financing. At this point, the bonds that were paid off are retired and they're not able to be used again. With a bond recycling program in place, those same bonds can be reused for another affordable housing development and reduce the amount of new tax-exempt bonds it needs to be financially feasible. Recycled tax-exempt bonds provide the same financial benefit to a developer that new tax-exempt bonds would, with only a few minor differences, which I'll discuss in a later slide. Overall, the bond recycling program can help reduce the demand on the annual allocation statewide by reducing the amount of new tax-exempt bonds that developments need. As a result of the available new tax-exempt bonds being oversubscribed, CDLAC amended the regulations to allow for applications that propose to use recycled bonds as part of their financing to score additional points, making their applications score higher and therefore be more competitive. Next slide, please. The California Housing Finance Agency received a large capital investment from Apple to help address the housing shortage in the state of California. Part of this investment is being used to purchase the bonds from projects that are completing construction and recycle them into new affordable housing developments. As I mentioned earlier, these bonds can be recycled into a new project. However, the recycled bonds do not generate tax credits, which are another limited source of affordable housing finance. This is one of the main reasons why affordable housing projects will still need to have a mix of new tax-exempt bonds that generate tax credits and recycled bonds that would not. So these recycled bonds will have several benefits. They're recycled from previous developments and therefore do not count against the annual $4.1 billion cap. This can be a way for projects to request smaller allocations of new bonds, which is important because the projects that request smaller allocations may be more competitive. As we've discussed, the current cap is oversubscribed. If a project is requesting less bond cap, more affordable housing deals may get funded across the state. Additionally, 80-20 projects, which are 80% market rate and 20% affordable, could also use recycled bonds as part of their financing, therefore not need to apply for as many new CDLAC issued bonds. And lastly, there's potential for the recycled bonds to be paired with other soft sources to create an alternative to the bond and 4% financing that's currently used to create affordable housing. Next slide, please. So with that overview of bonds and how the recycled bonds are proposed to be used, there are some rules and regulations that govern recycled bonds. The financing rules of those recycled bonds share some similarities and have a few differences with the tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds that you've heard me present previously. So bond recycling is allowed under federal law through the Housing and Economic Recovery Act of 2008. Both new tax-exempt and recycled tax-exempt will require a TEFRA hearing and public notice. They have the same income and affordability requirements and must be used for affordable multifamily housing. They differ in that recycled bonds do not generate low-income tax credit equity, they cannot be recycled, and they must be used within 6 months of repayment. Further, while the Housing Authority would issue new tax-exempt bonds, in the case of this MOU, Cal HFA would issue the recycled bonds due to their access to Apple's capital, as well as their technical expertise in issuing recycled bonds. If approved, Housing Commission staff would inform Housing Commission Board and City Council members of projects that intend to use CalHFA's recycled bond program. Additionally, we will be able to report back on how many units are created under this proposed program. Next slide, please. So with all that in mind, here's a graphic that helps break down some of this somewhat complicated process. Under the proposed structure, the Housing Commission would notify CalHFA that we have a project that is requesting recycled bonds, in this case, Project 2 on the slide. CalHFA would recycle bonds from any of its projects or any of ours that are finishing construction, Project 1 on the slide, with equity they've received from Apple, which is the credit facility, thereby preserving the bond's tax-exempt status. If Project 2 receives an allocation of bonds from CIDLAC, then CalHFA would then issue the bonds for Project number 2. As I mentioned on the previous slide, one of the key differences is that CalHFA, not the Housing Authority, holds the TEFRA hearing and is the bond issuer of the new tax-exempt bonds as well as the recycled bonds. The Housing Commission will still retain the issuer fee and 7.5% of the annual issuer fee. Now, if the Housing Commission does not have a project number 2 lined up that needs the recycled bonds, CalHFA would then be allowed to preserve the bonds from Project 1 and use them for other developments in San Diego with our approval or elsewhere within the state of California. Next slide, please. So this slide will depicts how the funds and bonds flow. With this structure, it allows the Housing Commission and CalHFA, using Apple's capital, to preserve what has become a very scarce financing resource. Without a recycling program, these tax-exempt bonds will continue to be lost. This MOU will give the Housing Commission the ability to recycle bonds from its projects in San Diego back into new projects in San Diego. If we do not have a need for them, we can give our recycled bonds to CalHFA so they can be used elsewhere in the state, helping to address the housing crisis both here and statewide. So the MOU is structured as a 3-year pilot program with 1-year options to extend if desired. We would obviously return to the Housing Commission Board and Housing Authority if and when requesting an extension. The proposed bond recycling program is an innovative financing solution that will help address the local and statewide issues of the 4% bonds program's oversubscription by reusing tax-exempt bonds. Under Mr. Gentry's leadership, the Housing Commission has continuously found new and innovative ways to create and preserve affordable housing. Continuing this tradition, if approved, the proposed MOU with CalHFA will be one of the first of its kind in the state of California. Next slide, please. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. Next slide. I, as well as members from CalHFA, are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any callers on item 103?
We do not have any callers on this item.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments?
So moved.
Okay. Thank you. All right. There we go. We've got a motion by Commissioner Mitchell, second by Commissioner Davis. We're going to go ahead and call the vote. Vice Chair Kleppner.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I'll add my vote in favor. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I'm sure Colin is upset that he doesn't get to talk about bonds for a while, though. Sorry to fill that quick, Colin. We'll move on to item 104, the amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding for the Oversight and Administration of the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. We got a little bit of a teaser on this one in the opening of the meeting. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 104. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted, but you can call 833-610-2513. We'll take those public comments after the presentation, which will come from Executive Vice President of Rental Assistance, Azucena Valladolid. Azucena, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning again. I am presenting the recommended actions to authorize the use of additional funds for the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program to help families pay their rent and utilities. Next slide, please. The San Diego City Council authorized the Housing Stability Assistance Program and the initial funding for the program on February 22nd of 2021. The program helps pay rent and utilities for qualifying households with low income who experience financial hardship due to or during the COVID-19 pandemic. The San Diego Housing Commission operates the program. We launched the online application portal on March 15th of 2021, and the application remains open. Next slide, please. This slide and the next slide show the updated details about the assistance payments the Housing Commission has issued and the applications for assistance. Jeff discussed these during his update earlier in the meeting, so we'll just display it for a second. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. On July 27, 2021, the City Council and Housing Authority authorized $60.1 million in additional funds to support this program. These funds were predominantly federal ARPA funds allocated directly to the city from the U.S. Department of Treasury. The state of California has allocated an additional $39.7 million in ARPA funds to the city. If the staff recommendations before the board today are approved, these funds from the state would support the continuation of the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. Next slide, please. In consultation with the mayor's office, we are recommending a reallocation of a portion of the previously approved funds. The funding initially approved for this program included $5 million in Federal CARES Act Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG-CV funds. The Housing Commission has prioritized spending all other funds first because the CDBG-CV funds have more restrictions and longer timelines for expenditures. Staff is recommending that these CDBG-CV funds be reallocated to support a new eviction prevention and education program. The eviction prevention program would be a collaboration between the Housing Commission, the City of San Diego, and a service provider to be selected. The program services may include outreach and education, legal representation and case management, and legal services for households with undocumented immigration status. Next slide, please. The eviction prevention and education program will provide support for tenants as eviction protections elements of the Assembly Bill 832 are implemented. The protections in the legislation are shown on this slide. Next slide, please. Today, staff is requesting that the Housing Commission Board recommend that the Housing Authority and City Council take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the next 4 slides. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Scott, do we have any callers for this item?
No, we do not have any callers.
Okie dokie. Commissioners, questions or comments? I think we covered some of this in the beginning, but any feedback?
So moved.
Okay, motion.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if I might, Charles Christensen. We've been in discussions with the City Attorney's Office, acting as the Housing Authority's General Counsel, as to whether or not Housing Authority approval is necessary for an amendment of the MOU. They're indicating that perhaps the vote by the Housing Commission Board would be sufficient. And to the extent that's the case, we ask that your approval today be either that the Housing Authority approve it, or in the event the city attorney comes to the conclusion that that approval isn't necessary, that your recommendation here be the final action.
Do we need to address that in a motion then, or?
Yeah. Yes, and if at the time you're ready to make a motion, I'd be happy to basically restate what I just said.
Commissioner Mitchell, would you be comfortable with that?
I am comfortable with that.
Okay, great. Chuck, if you wouldn't mind giving that to us one more time.
Recommendation number 1 for the Housing Authority says authorize. Well, first of all, it says the Housing Commission recommends that the Housing Authority take the following actions, and it says authorize the Housing Commission to execute an amendment. And the change I'd like to make is, in the event the city attorney determines it's not necessary for the Housing Authority to approve the amendment, that your action in approving this matter 1 would be the final action authorizing the execution of the amendment.
Okay, wonderful. So we have that motion. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and call the vote. Vice Chair Klempner?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Hester?
Aye.
And Commissioner Mitchell?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll add my vote in favor. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Item 105 is approval of a contract with Alpha Project to operate the city's harm reduction interim shelter program. The phone line is open for public comments about item 105. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We had no written public comments submitted, but again, the number is 833-610-2513. We'll take those comments after the staff presentation. But we'll hear from Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Lisa Jones, and Director of Housing First Administration, Casey Snell. Whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. So good morning, commissioners. As you mentioned, with me is Casey Snell, Director of Housing First Administration. We're here today to present staff's recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2022 agreement between the San Diego Housing Commission and Alpha Project to operate the City of San Diego's harm reduction interim shelter program. Next slide. On April 19th, 2021, Mayor Todd Gloria announced a proposed investment of more than $10 million in American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, to create additional crisis response resources and investments in shelter and longer-term housing options to address unsheltered homelessness. This program is part of a new strategy developed in collaboration between the city, the county, Housing Commission, and the Regional Task Force on Homelessness. Earlier this year, the Leadership Council for the Community Action Plan on Homelessness tasked an ad hoc working group to review ways that funding opportunities coming forward could support the city's homelessness efforts and consider approaches that could be best serve some of the most vulnerable people experiencing unsheltered homelessness on our streets. The approach the working group formulated focuses on a harm reduction model for people experiencing substance abuse challenges and mental health needs. The model pairs outreach and engagement with care coordination services, low barrier access to shelter, safe haven, and housing with the goal of improving client wellness and stability. The City of San Diego's fiscal year 2022 budget appropriated $7.5 million to support the development and expansion of harm reduction strategies for persons with substance abuse challenges and to implement additional shelter beds for high needs populations. The San Diego Housing Commission will administer the harm reduction interim shelter program through a memorandum of understanding between the city and the Housing Commission for the provision of homeless shelter and services programs. The shelter program will operate in conjunction with support from the County of San Diego's Behavioral Health Services new Community Harm Reduction Teams, or CHART program. Next slide. Alpha Project has extensive experience operating shelter programs, permanent supportive housing projects, and residential treatment programs for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. In addition to its shelter and permanent housing programs, Alpha Project operates Casa Rafael, a state licensed and certified residential treatment program for men in recovery from substance abuse. The Casa Rafael program offers an intensive 12-week environment in which residents participate in an evidence-based practice curriculum and provides housing, food, recovery workshops, case management, mental health counseling, access to healthcare, work, financial assistance, and other support services. Casa Rafael is primarily supported by the County of San Diego. Next slide. In conjunction with the County of San Diego's Behavioral Health Services, the new City of San Diego Harm Reduction Interim Shelter Program will provide safe, low-barrier shelter, as well as specialized stabilization and supportive services for individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness with co-occurring substance use and mental health conditions. Through its CHART team, the County of San Diego will provide a diverse portfolio of supportive services, including but not limited to outreach and engagement, case management, multidisciplinary care coordination, peer support services, substance abuse treatment, medication-assisted treatment, mental health services, and access to public benefits. Next slide.
Alpha Project will manage day-to-day shelter operations, including residential services, on-site security, ancillary facilities, and site management. Alpha will provide housing navigation services to assist clients with accessing the necessary supports to exit to a permanent or longer-term housing destination. A service coordinator will support the implementation of a client-centered and harm reduction service model by working closely with the county's contracted CHAR operator to coordinate the provision of care. Next slide, please. Services provided by the county will include referrals to primary care resources, health, wellness, and recovery activities, behavioral, mental health resources, and substance abuse treatment. Services provided by Alpha Project will include housing navigation, case management, residential services and staffing, 24/7 on-site security, a maximum of 50 beds and other residential furnishings for single adults and couples experiencing unsheltered homelessness, 3 meals per day, showers, wash stations, restrooms, laundry services, and property storage. Both partners will support transportation needs of program participants through direct transportation resources such as staff-operated vans and through bus passes. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission requires its subcontractors to take various COVID-19 precautions and to be in compliance with all local, state, and federal public health orders. Precautions are in alignment with guidance from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Preventing and managing the spread of infectious disease for people experiencing homelessness, preventing and managing the spread of infectious disease within encampments, and interim guidance for homeless shelter providers to plan and respond to coronavirus disease 2019. Budgets include personal protective equipment for both clients and staff. Shelters maintain screening and isolation procedures, which include daily health screenings and referrals to temporary lodging operated by the county. The Housing Commission coordinates with the County of San Diego for regular COVID-19 testing and vaccination opportunities at city shelter sites. Next slide, please. As outlined in the table on this slide, operating costs for the initial contract term from October 1st through June 30th, 2022 are $1,717,332. This includes shelter operations, startup costs, and Housing Commission administrative costs. Funding for the Harm Reduction Interim Shelter Program will be provided through an allocation of American Rescue Plan Act city general funds that were approved through the city's fiscal year 22 budgeting process. Future contract terms will be exercised contingent on funding being made available for this purpose through the city's annual budgeting process. Next slide, please. On May 11th, 2021, the Housing Commission issued a request for qualifications. The RFQ was posted and made available for download on the Planet Bids website through both the Housing Commission and the City of San Diego's portals. At the RFQ closing on May 31st, 2021, submissions were received from 2 respondents, Alpha Project and Father Joe's Villages. Both respondents were determined to be qualified, with Alpha Project being selected as providing the best overall value to the Housing Commission for the target population. Next slide, please. Staff recommend that the Housing Commission Board take the actions detailed in staff report HCR 21-090 and shown on the next 2 slides. Next slide, please. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. We're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, I don't have any questions about this necessarily, but Lisa, I would say to you and the team, every year around this time, I start to get a little nervous about the pending winter, and so I appreciate the focus on this. I think the county is preparing to make some big announcements as well about efforts they're going to make on the mental health aspects, and there's some structure enhancements. But what I've not heard is what are we doing necessarily on top of this to prepare for winter? I'm a big believer in you handle things in chunks. Our homeless population is obviously has grown. I think with the eviction moratorium, potentially going to expire, it could grow even further, and fall and winter will be upon us. So if you guys could come back to us with something that's an overview of what is being planned for winter to get people, I think we have a responsibility that, people should be warm, safe, and out of the elements way. In the next meeting, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Commissioner Mitchell, that is an ongoing thing we have to consider every year. And this year, there's a lot of additional impacts in regards to obviously the unsheltered population, and also considerations in regard to, how the region is doing with the Delta variant and those pieces as well, which was an incredibly infectious strain. So, and part of the process in standing up this new shelter was also looking at city assets and resources and what was available there. So the city has done a fairly good job, especially with their new director of real estate assets at the city, in kind of understanding better what their resources are. And that's going to help us prepare in those conversations as we go forward into the winter as well.
Yeah, I will make this statement. I think the business community is starting to wonder how much progress we're making on this. And obviously, Madam Chair, being at the chamber, we've had this debate about the winter, how to handle the winter for 15 years, right? And this year is it's no different. It's actually worse because the Delta variant is so infectious. But we have to do everything we can. I've always said that you have to have BHAGs, and for those who've read Good to Great, and our BHAG should be getting 95% of the people living on the streets right now into some sort of space where they're protected from the spread, but also from the elements of the winter. And I would like to see what we're doing with the city and the county, and that it's a realistic effort that can be executed. So,
any other commissioner questions, comments? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Davis. I say come off mute.
No, that's okay. I was going to move to approve. That's okay.
Oh, okay. Just quickly then, Lisa, we talked about this, but for the good of everybody else, I'd like to touch on security and safety concerns. This is an acute need population, and one that absolutely, I love the design of this, the smaller, service intensive model. I think it's a wonderful partnership with the county, but I am always sensitive to the fact that doing this, we take on every good project we do, we take on the credibility of every supportive housing program ever, because one mistake gives so much ammo to folks who think that these programs, these services are potentially, a negative in their community. So can we talk about how we're proactively thinking through that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a really good way to frame it, actually. And so frankly, the budget attached to this contract is a higher per person, per bed night cost than what we see in our other contracts, because this is a very specific target population with high needs. We may underspend, and that's fine, but we wanted to make sure that we built out a budget that was inclusive of security, that was inclusive of on-site Alpha Project, substance use support specialists, and some case management, even though the county is bringing on a lot of resources that will be coming and doing in-reach to the site on a daily basis. This is a City of San Diego program. It's got our name on it, the city's name on it. We want to make sure that we have an abundance of resources rather than a slim program, right? So we really built that in both the staffing and in the security aspect. Alpha Project is also particularly good at utilizing and leveraging their Take Back the Streets program, their Wheels of Change programs to have a positive impact on the community. So that was definitely influential in sort of choosing them as an operator. Plus, they're bringing in their folks in their division that really works around substance use and bringing that into this environment as sort of a pivot from some of our other shelters that we've had with them before. So frankly, we've overinvested just to make sure that we don't understaff this program, and we can always scale back, but we want to make sure that that it's successful, and then we give a pilot that is unique as this and is really a combination of agencies coming together its best chance to be successful. We need to stand up programming that better meets people where their needs are, and is a program that they'll engage with and that will work for them. So this is our attempt as a region and a community to really lean in a different way.
Thank you. And thank you for that answer. To that point too, I mean, I'm really excited about the county's engagement and the county's resources coming to bear. That has been a long process in the time that I've just been on the commission watching this and, change in leadership over the county, but nonetheless excited about this. but concerned with some of the previous comments that we've had, and this, you're not in charge of PD, but I'm sensitive to, even from the business side, you know, we hear that there's not maybe the level of responsiveness that we would want from PD sometimes. So glad to know that we've built that in, that security, that proactive sort of focus on safety with Alpha Project. Thank you. And, you know, we've invested the right amount of money and resources, it sounds like. So could this be scalable if it is successful?
Well, the concept behind this overall new program, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the next workshop, is around, you know, county engagement and outreach, harm reduction shelter, and harm reduction safe haven. So it's supposed to be a continuum and spectrum of services. And the idea is that if we can build up a success here, then we build on that and we have additional shelters of a similar model, additional safe havens of a similar model. This is really the direction that the county's been heading in, rather than sort of in place abstinence-based residential treatment, to get to harm reduction programs that are more accessible to people who are on their road towards recovery and not willing to jump into that inpatient services. So the idea, if we're successful, and that's really the goal, is to make sure that we can be, is to then scale, but keeping programs small so that we don't have large scale 100, 200 plus programs. This is really wanting to create a different environment for folks, and an environment that's trauma informed and feels more like welcoming and less maybe stressful for folks who might not do well in a larger shelter.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, thank you. Commissioners, I cut Maggie off before she was able to make her motion. If you want to speak, do it now. Otherwise, we'll entertain
Move to approve.
Thank you, Maggie. And we have
Second.
Thank you. We got a couple seconds. We got a third in there, I think. So we'll go ahead and call the vote. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And I'll go ahead and add my vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously. And next we're going to move into the workshop that Lisa was just referencing. So item 106 is an informational workshop about the City of San Diego Community Action Plan on Homelessness. The phone line is open for public comments on item 106. That's 833-610-2513. There were no written public comments, but that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take those comments after the presentation from Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Lisa Jones. Lisa, floor is yours again.
Good morning again. As you know, in 2019, the San Diego Housing Commission, on behalf of the City of San Diego, contracted with the Corporation for Supportive Housing to develop the City of San Diego's Community Action Plan on Homelessness. Can we just go one slide back, please? Thank you. On homelessness. In October of 2019, the City Council unanimously accepted the action plan. Since then, regular updates have been provided to the City Council and to the board about the progress made through activities that support the plan. The action plan is a comprehensive 10-year strategic plan that lays out short-term achievable goals and provides a guide for long-term success in addressing homelessness. The action plan also focuses on the importance of collaboration among major funding agencies, for instance, the county, the city, the Housing Commission, and the Regional Task Force on Homelessness in addressing this issue. Next slide, please. The action plan also recommended that the creation of a governance structure that supports cross-agency collaboration, systems-level thinking, and accountability. Based on this guidance, a leadership council and interagency implementation team were created. The Leadership Council regularly reviews progress on the Community Action Plan and provides direction to the interagency implementation team. The Leadership Council includes agency leaders and community representatives, including a person with lived experience, business, and philanthropic leaders. Mayor Todd Gloria, Council President Jennifer Campbell, County Board of Supervisors Chair Nathan Fletcher serve on the Leadership Council, as does our board member, Mr. Mitch Mitchell, and our CEO and president, Mr. Gentry, chairs that council. Next slide, please. The Interagency Implementation Team is a group of senior level staff from the main funding agencies and oversight structures in the city related to homelessness. The Housing Commission facilitates this team and supports the team and the Leadership Council through a full-time project manager dedicated to supporting the implementation of the action plan. And this is really where this plan is unique from other plans. You know, we have staffed it and resourced it appropriately. It is not a plan that sits on a shelf. It's a plan that is actioned and built into our work on a day-to-day basis. The team meets regularly along with policy liaisons from the Housing Commission, County, and the Regional Task Force on Homelessness, or RTFH. The implementation team provides recommendations to the Leadership Council and carries out actions and activities to achieve the goals in the action plan. Next slide, please. The action plan identified 3 goals within reach within 3 years. These goals are to decrease unsheltered homelessness by 50%, finish the job of ending veteran homelessness, and prevent and end youth homelessness. This was really to build momentum on the plan. A 10-year planning cycle is a long time, so it's important to build out goals that we can achieve to build momentum and keep energy around the plan. And obviously, in the wake of COVID, there's a lot of thought around looking at where we are and how we benchmark ourselves, and potentially even looking at doing some recalculations of some of the other numbers that we'll talk about later to make sure that we are aligning our current goals with still making that long-term 10-year achievement. Next slide, please. The following slides provide a list of activities that have occurred from January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. They're organized by the foundational strategies that apply to each activity and that you see here on this slide. I'm just going to highlight a few activities that we've achieved over the last few months or are underway. And we'll go to slide 6, please. Next slide. The activities shown here and on the next slide occurred this year under the foundational strategy to implement a systems level approach to homelessness planning. The activities in bold on this slide were identified as areas of focus for this calendar year. The action plan's progress at a glance dashboards have been updated to include specific U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development performance metrics as recommended by the Corporation for Supportive Housing in the action plan, as well as updated activity accomplishments. I'm going to provide a quick overview of the action plan dashboards now, and the communications team will just need to share my screen briefly. So you should be seeing our website right now. If you go to our website and go to Homelessness Solutions, City Community Action Plan on Homelessness, you'll notice that this is the landing page for the plan. It includes a link to the plan itself, an overall fact sheet, and progress at a glance. And this is how you access the dashboards. If you scroll down, it lists the Leadership Council, Implementation Team, and Policy Liaisons, but it also has links to memos in relation to the Leadership Council and activity that the Leadership Council has taken over the last year and a half. So clicking on the progress at a glance, this now brings up an overview of our performance dashboards. Gives an action plan overview. This is our performance data section. Performance data is broken down between goals within reach, progress against the foundational strategies, and specifically progress towards housing goals. So I'm just going to give a quick example, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but in goals within reach, you can go down and click on finishing the job of ending veterans homelessness as an example. And it brings up annual point in time counts for 2019 and 2020. The number in unsheltered homelessness, number in sheltered homelessness. In 2019, they were not collecting shelter data for veterans. They do now. 2021, there was no point in time count. So in some of our other areas of our dashboard, we really look at how else we can capture and look at numbers around metrics. Voucher utilization for VASH, you can see there's a significant increase between, this is 2019 and 2020. SSVF program outcomes, the supportive services for veterans families programs are predominantly rapid rehousing programs. You'll notice they actually served less in 2020 than in 2019, but that is frankly because they were serving families longer. So the longer you have to serve a family, the more financial assistance you use, the less families that can be served. And that's why we see that difference. COVID certainly had our impact on our veterans as well. And then veteran-specific resources. It compares emergency shelter beds, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other permanent housing options between 2019 and 2020. When we move into 2021, some of these metrics, which are considered HUD system performance metrics, are updated on an annual basis. You can also click on progress against strategies and click on specific strategies and their progress in that regard, improving the performance of the existing system, increasing access to production, prevention diversion. I'm going to call out progress toward housing goals because this really looks at what we've been very happy to develop in regards to our PSH tracker. Let me refresh because it's not coming up. There we go. So progress towards housing goals includes a homelessness interventions inventory. So it compares 2019 to 2020. You also have a percentage of the difference where there's been either an increase or decrease in beds. Overall beds have increased. Permanent solutions need. This current year, which shows our utilization of our different interventions during the current year, 2021. permanent solutions need. This is actually the data that was captured and detailed and calculated within the action plan itself. So it identifies the need, total need between for supportive housing, or PSH, developed between new construction rehabilitation, singles and families, was 2,802 units. Here we have our PSH pipeline tracker. It actually identifies the total number of units needed according to the action plan, total units approved since the plan sent the baseline. So we actually worked with Corporation for Supportive Housing to make sure we were not counting anything in our progress towards goals that they had already counted in 2019. So this is not counting anything they counted already. Oops, that's my light going off there. And total units needed. So total units approved is broken down here, and you can see it here that what those units are that are in process and the unit need. So it breaks it down into 26% in service, 22% under construction, 9% approved with finance pending, and 43% additional units still needed. So that really breaks down in a very brief overview some of our performance metrics. You can also click on activity accomplishments, and it breaks down by foundational strategy all of the different accomplishments and activities that have been happening, and gives detail on them when you press on these. So it really breaks down a lot of activity between 2019 and today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and move forward and give communications a moment to pull PowerPoint back up. So the dashboards will be updated regularly. The system performance measures are typically reported to HUD on an annual basis, and the same will be reflected on our dashboard. Other data elements such as voucher utilization and pipeline data will be updated more frequently. They're generally updated on a quarterly basis. The action plan encourages transparent communication to the public and community stakeholders about the successes, challenges, and progress towards the action plan's goals. A communications working group is developing a communication strategy to support that transparency, accountability, and public engagement. It's great to have these dashboards, but we want people to know that they're aware of them, and they want to make sure that they know how to access this information. The communications working group includes members of the mayor's staff, the Housing Commission, the Office of the Chair of the County Board of Supervisors, and the RTFH. Next slide. The activities on this slide were implemented this year under the foundational strategy to create a client-centered homeless assistance system, to create a system that meets people's needs and listens to system users to understand what those needs are. Action plan recommends creating feedback mechanisms and seeking input from stakeholders by utilizing advisory groups, including persons with lived experience, to convene on specific issues. An area of focus for this calendar year is to identify and determine any potential opportunities to impact the contributing factors related to the disproportionate representation of certain populations regarding entries into homelessness. The action plan speaks to the statistic that Black San Diegans are overrepresented in the city's homelessness population. The RTFH Ad Hoc Committee on Addressing Homelessness Among Black San Diegans was approved by the RTFH board in 2020. This ad hoc committee continues to explore factors contributing to this disparity and provide recommendations to the RTFH board. This feedback is shared with the implementation team to utilize, and recommendations to Leadership Council, and in general to utilize for program development and review. In addition, the 2020 point in time count found that there's a growing number of older adults facing homelessness. While chronological age demonstrates many older adults are living without a home, the rigors of homelessness are also known to prematurely age people as well. In 2021, the RTFH board approved the establishment of the Ad Hoc Committee on Older Adults Experiencing Homelessness to focus on the needs of these people. The implementation team continues to focus on engagement with advisory groups of persons with lived experience through regular communication with members of the HEAL network and Voices of Dignity. A provider advisory group and frontline staff advisory group were formed to create further opportunities for feedback specific to the activities and efforts that support the action plan goals, and to hear from frontline staff and providers around challenges, successes, and needs. The Housing Commission is also implementing an automated client feedback system referred to as Pulse for Good that will collect both quantitative and qualitative information that can provide system level feedback. The survey questions were developed through a community engagement process with the advisory groups of people with lived experience to ensure the survey has a client-centered and informed approach. This system will be implemented across multiple programs and will inform program and systems level trends, service gaps, or changes that may be needed. Next slide. The next two slides list the activities accomplished under the foundational strategy to improve the performance of the existing system. In June 2021, a month-long outreach effort was launched that involved city-funded outreach workers, county public health nurses, eligibility, and social workers from the county and federally qualified health centers in the downtown city core. This effort was developed to address the immediate challenges facing unsheltered individuals in alignment with the action plan and consistent with best practices. Outreach teams of 50 to 75 staff per day made contact with unsheltered individuals. The teams offered individualized supportive services, connected individuals to medical and other resources at the 3 rotating staging sites. They also collected information about unmet needs and system challenges, connecting people with available shelter beds and connecting individuals to other housing options. During the course of the event, 2,095 interactions were reported, 480 interactions through outreach engagement, and 1,615 walk-ups to the event site where a variety of services were available. I will note if people engaged in outreach and walked up to the site on more than one occasion, they may have been counted twice in that number or more than once. During that time period, over 470 people accessed shelter, which included 384 single adults and 336 people enrolled in outreach-based case management. Over 650 instances of services were provided by federally qualified health center teams from La Maestra, San Ysidro Healthcare, and Father Joe's Villages. County public assistance staff completed 114 public assistance applications, 751 people referred for behavioral health screenings, and 57 were connected to services. 247 county public assistance applications were completed, and county public health nurses provided 580 instances of services. Next slide. This multi-phase initiative is part of a new strategy developed in collaboration between the City County Housing Commission and the RTFH. Earlier this year, the Action Plan's Leadership Council tasked an ad hoc working group to discuss the variety of new funding opportunities coming forward that could support the city's homelessness efforts. This strategy addresses the immediate challenges facing unsheltered individuals in a multi-phased approach. The first phase was the month-long outreach effort that launched in late June and continued through July 23rd. The second phase consists of an approach focusing on a harm reduction model for people experiencing substance abuse challenges. This model, as we noted before, pairs outreach and engagement with care coordination services and low barrier access to shelter, safe haven, and the housing with the goal of improving client wellness and stability. The intensive coordination between the city and the county has been critical to aligning funding priorities, innovating to develop and fund new program models, and partnering in joint initiatives and strengthening existing programs. Next slide. The purpose of the harm reduction strategy is to develop resources that align with an approach that views the impacts related to substance use as a crisis that influences overall health, well-being, and the quality of life of the individual, families, and our community. We need to innovate strategies that better meet the needs of this population and programs that people want to and are comfortable engaging with. We need to meet people where they are on their pathway to stability, wellness, and housing with a tangible array of programs that best meet individuals' needs, utilizing best practices in addressing substance use and addiction. Next slide. This strategy employs an outreach model consisting of county community harm reduction teams, dedicated just-in-time shelter beds operating under a low barrier harm reduction model, which was detailed in the item you approved today for the new harm reduction shelter, and access to longer-term interim housing and safe haven programs operated by the County of San Diego. A focus through these 3 components on the strategy is also ensuring that participants are supported in accessing permanent housing. Next slide. Perfect. As mentioned earlier, these were just some highlights of activities conducted since January of this year. Details on more activities underway are included in the memos posted on our website, as well as the Community Action Plan dashboards. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have any callers, any public comments?
We do not have any callers.
Okie dokie. Commissioner comments or questions?
Yeah, Lisa, I wanted to just say, you had a slide up where you talked about utilization, with the utilization slide. Was that the percentages that you have that you showed shelter beds, like I want to say 87%, if I recall correctly?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that? What can you give a little more context around that utilization slide?
Mm-hmm.
That as of July 1? Is that as of?
So this was as of June 30th. So this would have been for this calendar year, 87%. That's not surprising when you think that we're combining Operation Shelter to Home beds with sort of our new reactivated system, right? So obviously Operation Shelter to Home, we had a significant number of beds. They weren't all utilized every day. And frankly, and it's something that we're really thinking about in regards to this harm reduction strategy as well, there is about 15% or so of our shelter beds that turn over and turn over and turn over. So on average, 70 to 80% of shelter beds are stable and people are staying sort of in place and working towards whatever that next thing is. But between 15 to 20%, we see a lot of turnover in those beds, and they generally are there 7 days or less. That means that they're not using that as a place to stop and find stabilization and figure out what's next. They're being used either as detox or to come in for a few days to shower, get food, sleep for a few days, maybe go back out again. So there's a population that is utilizing the shelter beds in sort of more of a turnover capacity or a short-term capacity. Part of the harm reduction strategy is to try to figure out how to create a program that better engages with those folks and that need, so that we can have stabilization in our existing shelters and another program that better meets the needs of people that aren't engaging and are turning over in our beds.
Yeah, I think the reason why I asked that question, Madam Chair, is as you know, there's growing frustration about what's happening downtown. The number of visible homeless, the number of mental health scenarios and situations. And so, Lisa, I think one of the things that we have to figure out, and this is probably a good conversation at the next Leadership Council meeting, is to talk about what's happening. You know, I know the county is preparing to make some announcements, and they're waiting for the city to give them approval on a few things, which hopefully this may require a call from you or Mr. Gentry to the city to try and get some of those things moved along. But I think the 87% utilization or 80% utilization number creates confusion because, you know, people are seeing more homeless, and there's a question of why aren't the beds being utilized. I know the Golden Hall is not at full capacity, so we probably need to do a better job of explaining that, you know, there's 20% of the beds are like a revolving door. But well, I think
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly your point. So these shelters have general case management, they have housing specialists, they do not have high level behavioral health, clinical social workers, substance use disorder in our existing shelter system. And so they're really not resourced for that severely mentally ill, significant substance use and co-occurring conditions. That's where hopefully this harm reduction strategy will really be more effective, but that's where we really need those county resources, right? Because they're not resourced to be effective to treat that population. And Golden Hall downstairs, which is actually very close to high utilization, it's actually the family beds upstairs that are a little under 50% right now. And I think to some degree that's evidence of the eviction moratorium. Obviously, we want to make sure we still have those beds online if that changes. But that's where that county resource, just to your point, Commissioner Mitchell, is going to be so important.
Yeah, I just think that we need to do a better job of making of clarifying for in particular the business community downtown what's happening, because I think there's you're right, none of the shelters are adequately resourced for severe cases or for certain levels of cases, but people are questioning what we're actually doing. It seems like we're going backwards because there are more people on the streets. And you know, I've always said it's seasonal in some instances. You know, when it gets colder, people are going to want shelter, and it gets damp but we're getting more criticism because it seems like we're taking 4 steps back. But the county, I know, is working on some resources, and hopefully we can get an overview of that at the next leadership meeting when it gets scheduled. I did talk to Chairman Fletcher, but we need to clarify the situation about what's happening, so we can try and.
If I could, Mr. Mitchell, one of the huge communication issues we have is how to show what is being accomplished. When it appears that the problem is getting worse just from the naked eye. And you mentioned the term a while ago, BHAGs. I want to make sure everybody knows what that means. Stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goals. And the problem with BHAGs is that there are also a lot of BHEPs out there, big, hairy, extensive problems, and trying to figure out how to take the goals and make the goals match the problems can be difficult. And particularly where it's something like homelessness, which covers a lot of different facets, a lot of different angles, and we have a lot of different programs to address it. I think one of the things I'd like to should do a shout out to both Lisa and also to Beto and our IT folks is the development of these dashboards. This gives us some data to make data-driven decisions insofar as we have the resources to do so, rather than guesswork. And it's allowed us, as Lisa just said, to focus in on particular types of homeless characteristics that are not, where the issues are not being met, rather than just doubling down on the same things that we're doing. And I think, Lisa, that's helped the county also focused in on what they need to do with in terms of some of the particularly illegal drug related and substance abuse issues with respect to some of the homeless behaviors out there. And I share, and I know the staff shares, Mr. Mitchell, with the business community, same concerns and frustrations that the more we do, the more we accomplish, the bigger the problem seems to get. And I think that what these dashboards will provide is some extra analytical abilities to focus in more on particular solutions.
Yeah, I think, and this is one of those where Madam Chair can help. We are right. We have to be. We need help on the message and what's happening, and where we have roadblocks and stuff. I think that we risk the business community losing faith that we can actually address homelessness appropriately, because it seems to be going backwards, and we need everybody, all hands on deck. As I've said before, the hospitals have to be involved in some of this discussion, and I think somebody's we may be the one group that can call everybody together to say, we need some additional help and support, but everybody needs to know where we are, what's actually happening, and where the largest gaps are. And I do think some of this is on the mental health side and the behavioral health beds, and so that's just my comment on it. I'm becoming increasingly concerned that what we're doing is disconnected from the reality, the perception of of people that seem like we're doing very little and not enough.
And maybe that if you use a medical model, pain is usually a reflection of something's not quite right. And if what we're doing here is not relieving the pain of the problem for the community, then maybe the issues and the solutions are beyond what we're doing. And maybe it will help the business community to focus in on other things that need to be done, in addition to reactive stuff that we're doing. So I'm not trying to belittle what we're doing. We're doing a hell of a lot, particularly compared to 5
I agree.
years ago.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think there are some solutions out there that need to be addressed that are perhaps broader policy decisions for this community than our programs.
No, I agree. And I made the recommendation, Lisa, the other day that, the clean and serve team that we have running around downtown, the county continues to talk about that we need a certain level of clinical
expertise.
And, I've suggested that we talk to Downtown Partnership, but is there a way to get some of their folks trained and with the proper and awarded the proper certificates so they can be that initial, intervention on some of the mental health aspects that are less severe. But we have work to do. But I'm impressed with what you guys are doing, Lisa. I'm impressed with how serious you're taking this. And again, not something that the commission was set up to do originally, but you guys have you've settled well. So.
Thank you, sir. It's kind of like a different mode, the emergency rental assistance program. We are learning new jobs every day.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. Are there other questions or comments? I'll just quickly, Commissioner Mitchell made a lot of very good points about the visibility of so much of the problem, and how the private sector is starting to feel increasingly kind of distraught. And I think some of that is probably the state of where many of us are, tired of a lot of things, kind of reaching the end of many ropes. And unfortunately, some of the visibility of our unhoused neighbors having really acute crises on the street is both heartbreaking and upsetting for everybody. And so the commission, I think these dashboards will really be a good tool for folks who do care to get themselves educated on the progress and the incremental sorts of moves that are making. But I think too, to what Commissioner Mitchell was saying earlier about that leadership council, the commission is uniquely situated to, for lack of a better phrase, knock heads together, because that proven leadership, the time in this space, and you all don't cycle through based on elections. Thank God. So I hope that we'll really, take those moments to flex that muscle. And gosh, I wish I had a better term for all the things I'm saying right now. But the crisis point has greeted us, probably a little bit weirdly thanks to pandemic times. But I hope you'll continue to do that, whether it's PD, the county, and the city working together, private dollars. So thank you.
And thank you. If I could, just a couple of points. There are communities where the housing staff do cycle through with elections, and thank goodness that's not the case in San Diego. It can be disruptive. I've seen the effect. The Community Action Plan on Homelessness, I want to make sure that this board understands that came from Housing Commission staff. That didn't come from the City Council. That came from me and my staff here. And we put that together because long about 2018, we saw the coming substantial changes in the elected representation at City Hall, and wanted to set up an approach that was institutional rather than just reflecting a personality or two. And when we put that homelessness plan together, we then decided we did not want it to be just another document or piece of paper sitting on the shelf. It was also our idea to make sure that we put together an implementation team that would ensure that it was a living document and not just a one-time shot. And we made sure that implementation team reflected leadership both in the business community, and I'll point out Mr. Mitchell went on that committee before he went on this board. He's smiling right now. He knows we drafted him for that before he got drafted for this board. So it was on purpose to make sure that the leaders could convene and change the plan as it needed to be changed going forward to get things done. So I think it's the best institutional approach is pulling all the folks together. And I think it's going to be perhaps a vehicle to react to the ongoing pain of not having this issue solved yet. Certainly hope so. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, this is an information item, so no action needed. If this is a final call for comments. But we'll go ahead and move on to item 107, an informational workshop about the Affordable Housing Dashboard. The phone line is now open for public comments about 107. That number is 833-610-2513. Go ahead and call if you'd like to be placed in the queue. We had no written public comments, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take comments after the staff presentation, which will come from Executive Vice President of Real Estate, Emily Jacobs. Emily, whenever you're ready.
Great. Good morning. This morning, I'll be sharing with you our new affordable housing dashboard that will be available through the Housing Commission's website early next week, and just wanting to make sure it's up. Patrick?
Just a second, sharing my screen now. All right. Good to go.
So these dashboards will serve individuals and families who are looking for affordable housing, provide high-level information to the public and policymakers, and support the Housing Commission's transparency as a government agency. These dashboards are a product of work that actually began in 2019 with the launch of our affordable housing database that has helped us with both internally with agency responsibilities and externally with our response to data request. In the last 6 months, the Real Estate Division and the Information Technology Department have worked together to take the next steps to make important information from the Affordable Housing Dashboard, database available directly to the public. The landing page you see here of the dashboard takes the user to an affordable housing overview. The map shows affordable housing in relation to a variety of jurisdictions and community amenities such as transit, schools, daycare, and parks. These can be selected from a drop-down menu in the top right-hand corner. When the user selects a specific council district or another grouping method from the drop-down, the table on the right will highlight the metrics for the grouping. The user can also toggle between seeing all affordable housing properties to those that are owned or managed by the Housing Commission, its nonprofit affiliate Housing Development Partners, or both. The map on the left is also searchable by zip code. The table on the right under the heading, Summary of Affordable Housing in the City, is dynamic and adjusts based on the selections made in the drop-down menus. When a user clicks on one of the dark boxes on the map, they can click on a shortcut to a Google Street View or to the Property Overview tab. The Property Overview gives a summary of information about the property, including its proximity to transit and the property management contact info. Programs associated with the property, such as project-based housing vouchers, or if the property is a single room occupancy, also are shown on this tab. To help those that are looking for housing, the transit map allows those users to find the transit stop within a searchable range from the selected property. By hovering over a transit stop, it will give the user information regarding the routes at that particular stop. The dashboard also allows users to export data into an Excel file. This is a new self-service option for those seeking information about San Diego's affordable housing stock. We have included an explanatory disclaimer about factors that affect the data and dedicated email address for users to ask questions about the data. These dashboards provide more information and functionality than the searchable map of affordable housing currently on our website. Over time, we'll continue to work to add to these dashboards to continue to serve the public with information such as additional site and community information, additional filtering and reporting capabilities, pictures of each property, and an external link to the property management or developer website. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. With me is my colleague Patrick, as well as IT staff. Thank you very much.
I think it's good.
Sorry, everybody. Do we have any public callers?
We do not have any callers.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments? It sounded like Commissioner Mitchell was getting ready to jump in.
I was just going to say it's impressive. I appreciate this this additional data stop that will be on the website, and it will create its own conversations and questions. In particular, as you look at the areas where you have the clusters and where you lack any sort of cluster. So, and that's not a bad thing, but you know, I once was having a conversation with a city council member who said, "Well, we don't have a homeless problem in my district," and I was with some prominent business people who said, "How can that be?" But I think when you look at that clusters and you look at where we lack it, it's definitely going to create some conversation. So,
Emily,
go ahead, Commissioner Hester.
Emily, thank you for this presentation. Is this data for data purposes only, or is this used like for someone who wants and needs a housing for themselves, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. It initially started to more efficiently and quickly respond to data requests. And what has morphed from there is the ability to enhance the platform that we have to use it as a tool for those that are seeking housing navigation.
As you all have time to go online and take a look at this stuff, I would ask you to reflect on the customers that it represents that are being served by our products here. And I think this is a great product. And again, to Beto and to Emily, job well done. Thank you.
Yeah,
I agree. Just jump in. I'm sorry. It would be remiss of me not to point out that Patrick Zamora has been really heavily involved in this. In fact, I would say this is his baby. So we want to make sure that he gets the credit he deserves on this one.
Good job, Patrick. One last question, Emily. Is this ready? It's online. It's active.
Yeah, so it will be activated early part of next week. Hoping for Monday, but it is tech, so I'm saying early next week to get.
So I'd like to be able to promote this as a resource. So great job, team. Thanks.
Absolutely. I want to echo the feedback from the other commissioners, and so what Commissioner Mitchell was saying about where you see clusters and where you don't. There's a lot of new energy in the housing discussion at City Hall. I would encourage you all, and I know you all are constantly briefing council staff and council members, but to the extent that we can cross-train them on the data that we have so that as they're coming across folks, I would imagine more people are familiar with their city council member than they are with their friendly neighborhood housing commission. So, but cross-training the staff members in their offices, or maybe just the housing person, and this is probably something that Molly would be much better suited to explain if she agreed, but I think that they could really benefit from a good grasp of the data we have, the resources, and where it intersects as far as the casework that they have to do every day. So thank you for this. Really looking forward to seeing this go live and become a useful tool. I'm still running the meeting, so I don't know why I just shut up. Okay, is anything else? Any other feedback? It's an information item. There's no motion needed. Okay, well, we can go ahead and conclude. Maggie, I'm sorry, it was longer than 5 minutes. But just really enjoying the last couple of minutes with you here. So again, thank you, Maggie. Thank you, team. Lots of really good information here. I think we can conclude our special meeting today, and we will adjourn at 11:01. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.